Alright, take one for a new writing revisited video. I know I've done several revisited videos that are about writing but not necessarily stories. Unfortunately, this one's not a specific story either. If you guys recall, one of the last writing revisits that I did involved Scourge the Hedgehog from the Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comics. This video has nothing to do with Scourge, nor does it have anything to do with any of the different Sonic the Hedgehog comic continuities. Rather, this one has to do with a website that, as far as I know, is gone. Maybe it's just rebranded, maybe it's just moved to a different domain name, but thankfully I managed to save some summarization and a few comments from the website in question before it shut down. The website of which I speak is called FactPile. Now, when I just looked up the logo for FactPile, it appears that they also have a YouTube channel, but it hasn't uploaded in 4 years as of the recording of this video, so I imagine something happened and the website had to get taken down. If there was any controversy around that, this video is being made entirely without any of that knowledge. I don't know why FactPile doesn't exist anymore. But I did, as I said, copy over some comments that someone made on FactPile while it was still up, and I saved those comments to a Microsoft Works word processor document, much like I did with the Scourge reboot explanation that I did in that previous video. And I figured we'd go over it just a little bit and we can cover some of the material in it, because I promise you, this blew my mind as a teenager. So the fact that I felt it necessary to copy it and document it should mean a lot. Okay, so there's two characters for which I saved some of the posts regarding, and today we're going to go over the posts regarding Sonic the Hedgehog. Pay no mind to the fact that I had my favorite hedgehog down there a second ago. Let's just move past that. But I'm gonna read some of this stuff, and then I'm probably gonna spit it back in a hopefully more understandable form. There was a lot of power scaling and versus battle discussion on FactPile, and that's what most of this was born out of, so it'll become clear once I start explaining it. Unfortunately, I never wrote down the usernames of any of the people that wrote this, so that's why it's blurred, because I'm not going to directly speak what was written here, or at least I'm going to try not to. So a lot of this revolves around what is considered easily the worst game in the series, and that's Sonic 06. So basically, in the final battle against Solaris, who is a time god, Super Sonic, Super Shadow, and Super Silver all team up to fight Solaris, but they each occupy a third of all time, which is described here as having a layered perception of time, because Sonic occupies the current third of time. I don't exactly know how that works, but it makes sense considering Solaris is infinite, and Solaris is the embodiment and encapsulation of the concept of time. So all three of the hedgehogs have to team up to defeat him, which means that each one of them takes up roughly a third of the total entity of Solaris. So they experience time in a really sort of weird way, because the super form is what they have to use to fight Solaris. And through the chaos energy in those super forms, they experience reality way different than we do. Oh right, Sonic can stop time in some iterations of the character. So if we assume that he has 50 rings to start, because that's always the minimum for Super Sonic, then that means Sonic has 50 seconds which he can be super in, because one ring is taken away per second. But because Sonic can stop and or otherwise manipulate time, each of those 50 seconds can almost really be an infinite amount of time, because he can stop time within each of those 50 seconds. It really starts to hurt your head if you think about it too hard. But basically, there's time as we experience it, and then there's time as Sonic experiences it. So 50 of the seconds of time that we experience is all that Sonic can get, but the time he's experiencing is way different because he can manipulate time through the supersonic form. Yeah, this gets kind of bonkers because basically this guy is explaining that Sonic can basically exist for the full 50 seconds of the battle in which Supersonic is active, all within like a fraction of an actual second. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but basically all the time that we experience that he would necessarily be locked into the super form for, because of his time manipulation capabilities and the fact that he can exist concurrently in all local points of time in the present moment, that means he can basically have a full transformation time period within a fraction of that actual time period. It doesn't make sense, but yeah. The fact that this thing is bringing up the first ring of perception, it's definitely a power scaling versus match. It also mentions Thanos in here. Presumably that means because Infinity War had just come out, but I'm pretty sure I saved this long before Infinity War or Endgame existed, so this is probably talking about the comic version of Thanos, which from what I understand is a bit of a jobber, and that's just because he's existed in comic books for so long that it's basically become a rite of passage to go, oh, this character can defeat Thanos, and it might have meant something at first, but now it doesn't mean anything. Oh my goodness. Did I mention the fact that this document uses the term chronolinear? So basically what it's saying is, if you want to hurt Sonic when he's in his super form in any real meaningful way, you can't just hit the Supersonic standing in front of you. You also have to basically reach your hand into the time stream and punch all Sonics across all moments in time at the same time. Think of it like this. If you punch Sonic at 0 seconds, you also have to punch Sonic at -1 seconds and at +1 seconds. Otherwise, you're basically not even doing any damage to him. Because no matter what, if you're hitting one but not the others still exist and are undamaged. So Sonic is kind of, as it describes here, an abstract being. Unless you're hitting all of the different Sonics in all of the different moments in time, which, for the record, time can be divvied up infinitely. You can literally divide it way, way, way down. I know Planck time is cited as the minimum time, but you literally can subdivide it all the way to, like, instances, which are moments of time that only, divine beings like God and the angels can perceive. Sonic is literally that ridiculous in his super form because he exists across all of time. It's bringing up the Daleks from Doctor Who. I haven't watched Doctor Who, but apparently the Daleks set a reality bomb to explode and destroy reality in Doctor Who, but they place it at +1 seconds into the future, so the Doctor must have had to do something kind of wonky with all the time stuff to stop it, because if it's +1 seconds in the future, unless you exist at +1 seconds in the future, you can't do anything to stop it. And basically this is saying that Sonic exists at -1 seconds, 0 seconds, and +1 seconds, infinitely, and so on, until he covers 1/3 of all possible points in time. And I'm assuming Super Shadow and Super Silver probably have this same kind of BS explanation to them, because they also went super during that fight with Solaris. So, oh, this is starting to hurt my head. Basically, what he's explaining right now is that because Sonic covers all of those different moments in time, and because he can time travel as Supersonic, basically, if you're fighting Supersonic at time equals 0, Supersonic at time +1 could be landing a punch, and then when time ticks over to that second, that punch could basically come out of nowhere and hit you, and you can't do any damage to that Sonic anymore because it's no longer that moment in time anymore, because that second is now this second. Oh yeah, right, Sonic can also move at light speed, so basically take all of those punches that Sonic is dealing from infinite portions of time divided by 3, and they're all hitting at light speed. I want to say that they're making Sonic out to be way stronger than he is, but none of this sounds like it doesn't make sense. it just sounds like the games don't really portray him as powerful as he really is. Okay, so that must have been from a thread about comic book Earth 616 Thanos versus Supersonic. There's also stuff from a thread pertaining to Super Mario versus Sonic. And in particular, some of these remarks are about him using a stopwatch to freeze time and defeat Sonic. Feel like I've heard that in Death Battle, because Death Battle has done 2 different Mario versus Sonic death battles, but let's see what this says. Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, basically if you kill Sonic at one point in time, there are an infinite number of Sonics from different versions of time in alternate realities that exist at the same time. So you technically didn't win even though you killed him. There are still infinite numbers of him that can fight you. And this one's not even bringing up the fact that he can time travel. Yeah, if Sonic's brain moves at light speed, as evidenced by the fact that he can do the light speed attack, he's kind of like Superman in that he probably legitimately has to slow his own brain down, because if he's opting into combat with someone, his brain is processing so fast that he has time to come up with an entire battle plan and strategy in the fraction of a second in which the battle starts. And if he starts out with 50 rings and decides to turn to Supersonic immediately, it's just game over, because if he can think that fast and the Chaos Emeralds work off of thought and emotion, then that means in a fraction of a second at the start of the battle, he can turn into Supersonic. And then the speed of light doesn't even matter at that point, because he now exists in a third of all possible timelines and realities. So good luck beating that. Yeah, basically if Sonic turns super, it's over. I think this is where you kind of have to bring in the whole nature of Sonic's character and his behavior to even get close to a fair fight, because if you just outright bloodlust Sonic and he has access to Supersonic, it's a wrap, it's over. I definitely understand why I saved all of this stuff, because it basically says Sonic the Hedgehog raffle stomps Mario. If Mario's speed of thought is at all comparable to a regular human being's, he doesn't even stand a remote chance, because Sonic can move and therefore think at light speed. This must have been a multiple person match. Yeah, the fact that Sonic moves at light speed would basically break the necks of pretty much anyone he fights that isn't built to withstand that kind of force.
What's going on, guys?
Larry, this is an intervention. You need to stop breaking people's necks.
What are you talking about?
Larry!
What?
Larry!
Yeah, if you were to realistically depict Sonic in his spin dash ball form, actually hitting anybody at a sufficient speed, he'd basically just rip and tear until it's done. Okay, the stopwatch must have been in Super Mario Bros. 2, baby! Sonic can think faster than the speed of light? Well, I guess he would have to, wouldn't he? Yeah, you basically have to blow up the entire battlefield instantaneously and within a massive range around that. Otherwise, Sonic can technically escape or evade the attack. You know, comparing Sonic to an Eldritch Abomination was not something that I expected to read through today, but, you know, here we are. He can avoid getting hit after the fact, which I think makes sense given the 1/3 of infinite time bit, because even if you hit Sonic at time equals 0, at -1 and +1, he wasn't hit, and he could basically selectively choose which incarnations of himself exist in the present moment. I'm not even trying to keep track of the present moment at this point. It's so clear that Sonic is ridiculously overpowered if you take his capabilities and logically extrapolate them. I am gonna read it directly here. It says, Sonic is an effing razor blade that cuts through titanium steel like wet tissue paper. Which, I mean, based on what I've read so far, yeah, kinda does sound like that, doesn't he? Yeah, he can basically actively ignore cause and effect, which is what makes him an abstract being in his super form. Again, I don't think the games really understand the weight and effect of the things that they have done with him as Super Sonic in the stories. Yeah, so basically, if you punch Sonic in his super form, and one of them takes damage because you hit him hard enough, but the other one doesn't take that much damage because you didn't hit him hard enough, the one that got hurt can basically replace himself with the one that didn't get hurt. So it's basically as if you never punched him and hurt him in the first place. He can ignore cause and effect. So basically, even if Mario, for example, went into his invincible state, Sonic can control time and can thus choose which version of him he wants to be, so he can choose which effects take place and which ones don't. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he basically has infinite speed and zero speed because he both exists in all points of time and is unmoving, but he can also move through all points of time at whatever pace or speed he wishes. So, my head's starting to hurt. And apparently Sonic remained in his super form for several consecutive days within the final story of Sonic Advance 2, so he had probably what could be considered infinite time to basically get to understand how the super form works. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So basically the only reason Sonic ever loses as Super Sonic is because he basically picks and chooses when he wants to win and when he wants to lose. Because Solaris was a time god, and the only way Sonic and Shadow and Silver could defeat Solaris was basically by ignoring the cause and effect of normal time. So, yeah, Sonic, as is written here, basically just pimp-slapped Solaris and basically enforced the law of cause and effect on it. It's actually kind of ridiculous. So yeah, what did we learn today? We learned that Sonic is basically Cthulhu. He can basically just make reality as he wishes because he can move infinitely. Thankfully, Sonic is
Just a guy that loves adventure. I'm Sonic the Hedgehog.
so I don't think we have to worry about it so much, but this basically says, yeah, don't mess with Sonic and don't piss him off. From the information given, we basically can conclude that the only characters that really should mess with him are Silver the Hedgehog and Shadow the Hedgehog. And Shadow might even be more insane because his present moment self has ready and available access to all the Chaos abilities, so he's really the only one that can stand a chance against Sonic. I don't want to think about it much harder than I already have. Anyways, you guys let me know what you think of all this absurdity. I don't know how long FactPile has been down as a website, but I've been sitting on that for a while. There is another character that I did save some stuff regarding, so I may do this again because that was actually a lot more than I thought it was. Leave a like if you felt like your brain was expanded by this video, or if it was scrunched down. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of all this ridiculous bullshit, and I will see you guys in the next video.